Welcome into Deep Waters here on ProBox TV. That's right, Monday through Friday, all your boxing news. Don't forget to download the app, like, subscribe on YouTube. So what is the boxing news right now? That's right, Jake Paul flattening former UFC and bare knuckle fighter Platinum Mike Perry on his way to a 6th-round knockout to solidify his status as a YouTuber, boxer, we don't know. We'll figure it out and have the people to help me figure it out. That's right, in studio, Chris Algieri helping me out on Zoom, Paulie Malignaggi, and ESPN boxing analyst Timothy Bradley. Gentlemen, stock report. That's where we're going to start here, right? Chris, I don't want to bring in outside conversations, but we had an outside conversation about it. You used the word regression on Saturday. What did you see and why?
Yeah, I mean, listen, a couple months back, maybe about a year ago or so, Jake said, listen, I want to do this like a regular fighter, a regular prize fighter. I'm going to go grassroots. I'm going to fight real boxers on the way up, just like you would working towards the title, and I want to be a world champion. That lasted 2 fights, and then he calls out Mike Tyson. And now Mike Tyson is Mike Tyson, of course, but he's 58 years old. And then obviously that's how that fight fell through. Then he gets Mike Perry, who is a bare knuckle fighter, UFC fighter, a guy who is a lot smaller, and we saw that on Saturday night. But even during that fight, with a guy as slow-footed as Mike Perry was, who didn't have his hands up at any point during the fight, was just there to get hit, he was very wild, a lot of wild punching. I believe he's regressed. There were times where, he's an athletic guy, he's big, he's got a very good right hand, good power. It seemed like he was working on some things. This fight, I saw less of that. I saw back to the beginning where he's just looking for knockouts. He's got guys in front of him that really are just completely out of their depth. Mike Perry was completely out of his depth that night. Way smaller, didn't have the footwork, didn't have the defense, didn't have the punching power, couldn't even get to Paul. But Paul didn't use his skills. He just used his size and kind of was using gorilla slaps to knock Perry down at certain times. When you outweigh a guy, Tim, when you outweigh a guy by 20, 30 pounds and you hit him on the ear with your forearm, they go down.
Yeah, but Tim, to Chris's point, when you look at professionals, iron sharpens iron, right? You get better because you have to, because you're taking on professionals with real skills that are your size that can put you down. When you're not, you have no reason to get better. What's your thought on that, Tim?
I thought this was a boxing channel, man. This isn't boxing. This ain't boxing. Right. I'm sorry, man. This is what you call like celebrity death match. Like it's celebrity. That's what this is called, man. To be honest with you, I mean, if Jake wants to impress me, man, he got to start fighting real fighters. The last time he was in a ring with a real fighter, he lost. He lost a real fighter, and Tommy Fury, who I don't think is that good. He's not that good, but Tommy Fury was better than him on that night. He was better than him on that night. And, I look at Jake and I say to myself, like, man, like, what is he? And I put a finger on, I said, damn, you know what? He's like how they have those plants in Hollywood, like a industry plant. He's like a boxing plant. Like he was planted in boxing. Like first of all, no NFL, he couldn't do that. No NBA, he couldn't do that. No hockey, couldn't do that. I mean, there's requirements to be able to play with those guys. But boxing, it's like he was planted in a boxing game, and now he's using fighters for, I would say, somewhat protection. He's surrounding himself by Terrence Crawford and Serranos of the world. However, he's in the game just milking and scamming boxing in the people. He's not that good, people. I'm letting you know. He's not good at all. He's not a tremendous boxer. No, and he's picking and choosing who wants to fight. And I know what you're going to say. Well, every fighter does that. Every fighter does that. But when I'm hearing that the WBA is talking about sanctioning him and Cesar Chavez Jr. for a championship bout, I have a problem with that, man. And Paulie, I'm curious to see, man, what the hell you want to say about this, bro. This is ridiculous.
First, let's go to the tweet itself. I'm not against Jake Paul versus Julio César Chávez Jr. for a championship WBA. Paulie, how is this not a slap in the face to anyone who has ever been called champ? Which I call you champ. Go ahead.
First of all, I think it wouldn't be a major world championship belt or fight. You wouldn't be able to do that because in reality, it would have to be it would have to be 12 rounds if it were to be for a meaningful belt. So they would have to make up some kind of strap for these guys, like the MVP belt or the YouTube sensation belt.
The Northwest South Florida belt of
territory wrestling days, right?
Because I don't know about that, man. I really don't.
You'd have to make it 12 rounds if it was going to be a meaningful belt. You know what I mean? Any world championship for sure. So it would not be any meaningful belt. So when we talk about, what people like to say, oh, in boxing they make a lot of belts. They do make a lot of belts, but in boxing we know what the main attraction belts are. There's 4 major world titles. There's 4 sanctioning bodies, and they make a ton of belts. But the major world championship of those sanctioning bodies, of the 4 sanctioning bodies, are the championships that matter, not the 4 sanctioning bodies and every belt they create. The major world championship of those 4 sanctioning bodies, if that's easily explainable, right? For the layman. So I don't think you would be able to make. I mean, the sanctioning body would be able to create another minimal title for these guys, but that would be it. I mean, yeah, you would make it for. I mean, the WBC does this all the time. Every time there's some kind of celebrity fight, like Mayweather and McGregor or whatnot, they just tack on a belt on there. You know what I mean? So it's not like the WBA is doing anything that WBC hasn't already been doing.
What if it was for a real belt, though? Hypothetically, what if it was for a real WBA belt?
Who would you strip? Who would you strip? It would be they would make a WBA Ruby title. You know, they made like the gold belt and the silver belt. They'll make like WBA Sapphire belt or the WBA Ruby belt. They'll create something. I have no doubt about that. The WBA Copper belt, whatever. They'll create something. But everybody knows all of those belts don't mean anything anyway. Even people in boxing know all those belts don't mean anything anyway. Just the major championship of those sanctioning bodies means something. That's it. All the other belts don't mean anything. If you're walking around, even if you're a fighter walking around with an NABO title, NABF title, I got one right here. NABO title means absolutely nothing. It's like it's an ornament that just lays around my house.
It's a trinket. But Paul, you know who doesn't know? You know who doesn't know that those belts aren't real?
What?
All the people that showed up to that fight on Saturday night.
Of course.
People that were there,
and even the MMA dummies. I'm like, it's harder to win a belt.
He's a world champion. He's a world champion in boxing.
In boxing, they give away belts. Yeah, they give away the ones that don't matter. And everybody in boxing knows most of those don't matter. But everybody in boxing also knows the ones that actually matter are difficult to win. Yeah. And that brings me to my next point. That's why Julio César Chávez Jr. is such a I don't want to say the wrong thing. He's a stain. He's a stain. I was going to say another kind of stain. He's a stain on boxing. All right. I was going to say a certain kind of stain. Chávez Jr. is a stain on boxing. All right, because he actually. The WBC manipulated in a way where this bum won a major world championship. So now every time somebody wants to be able to say, oh, see how easy it is to win a major world championship? This guy won a major world championship in boxing. He's like the stain on us. Because everybody else who won a major world championship in boxing didn't get it given to them. Even if they had one great night, even if they had a couple of great nights, whatever, even if they showed up for a fly-by night against them, won a major world title and lost, they still had to earn it a certain way. Chávez Jr. wouldn't have been, I've said it the other day, he wouldn't have got it within a sniff of a major world title if he wouldn't have robbed 6 or 7 guys on the way up before that. So he wouldn't have even had his record in a way where you would have got him in a title fight. Then he ended up getting in a title fight. They manipulated that as well. They stripped Sergio Martinez and made him and Zbik for the title. And somehow he ended up winning the title. Either way, what I'm getting at, this load stain right here, Chávez Jr., okay? This stain right here. He's going to now get a shot at Jake Paul and they're going to make a belt for it. This guy right here, no way. That's the problem. And this is why people on the outside who don't understand boxing will say, see, boxing's a joke. They make up belts. Yes, these belts don't mean anything. If the WBA makes up a belt with Chávez Jr. and Jake Paul, it doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that Chávez Jr. should even get this fight. Did you guys see Chávez Jr.? Are we really talking about this right now?
That was a draw. Here's the deal, Paulie. Let's discuss that.
Look better.
He looked. Chávez Jr. took on Uriah Hall.
I think Jake Paul beats him.
Right. As an MMA fan, right? Uriah Hall, known for his kicks, not his punches. Never a great boxer. Never had great hands.
He's also retired.
People were booing, Chris. Yeah. They were booing. But what we said, and Paul, you said this before, was that this is all set up to make Chávez Jr. versus Jake Paul at some point in the future. Crowd was booing. Chris, based on his performance, it would be a joke of a fight, but it looks like it's going to happen.
Listen, Paul, you even said it. That fight very well could have been a draw. You could have had Uriah Hall winning that fight. People were booing. You said it was a very
god-awful,
low-action fight. Uriah Hall has been retired for a number of years. Was a good MMA fighter, very good striker, but mostly a kicker. And listen, he actually looked okay. He looked okay, but he's retired. He showed up for a paycheck essentially, but almost had a chance to win and did go for it at times. But listen, this is the next move. They're going to have Julio César Chávez Jr. versus Jake Paul in November because the Mike Tyson fight's not happening. It's not happening, guys. He's 58 years old. He's not getting younger. I don't care how much drugs they put in this guy in the meantime. He's just not going to get there. It was an ulcer that got him out of the first fight. He's not going to get healthier on the way to 59 to get into that fight. So that fight's not happening. They're going to put in Chávez Jr. It's just a namesake for Jake Paul to fight, and Jake Paul's probably going to win.
Look at the champions right now. Tim, let's talk about this. When you look at the champions at cruiserweight, there is not one beatable name on there. WBO is Chris Billum-Smith. IBF, Jai Opataya, who has looked great. Gilberto Ramirez. Then you have Nornera Mikkeljan. What would you do? What would be the methodology? If I'm watching this right now, and I'm a boxing fan, but I don't really know how it works. Tim, would you strip one guy, have him move to heavyweight? That creates an interim bout. How would you make room for even a ridiculous title fight at cruiserweight? How would it happen, Tim?
Look, boxing changes every single day, right? And guys move up in weight. Jai Opataya have been adamant about moving up to heavyweight and doing the same thing, similar to what Usyk has done.
Yep.
So if a belt becomes vacant, right? Vacant
for a certain amount of money,
particularly the WBA,
right?
Apparently,
yes, apparently
they can align whoever the hell they want, especially a money guy like Jake Paul, and put him in there with a guy that he can beat to get him a belt.
Nice.
Anything is possible in this game of boxing, man. Everybody calling me a sellout. Man, there's so many sellouts in boxing, dude.
Guys,
so many sellouts. All the sanctioning bodies are sellouts. There's guys that's affiliated with boxing.
Paulie's in pain here, people. I know Paulie's going to make it through this show.
Go ahead. Shoot yourself, Paulie. Go ahead.
Guys.
You know that's possible.
Guys, we're better than this, guys. We're better.
Come on, man.
No, Tim, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with
serious.
you. I'm going to extend it a little bit, though. We're better than this. We're better than this conversation, guys. We're still talking about basically a prospect. Now, why are we mentioning this prospect in a world championship fight? No other prospect at this point in their careers would be, let's check on the belt holders and the title holders and see who he can fight. What are you talking about? Yo, Lucas Body just knocked Ashton Silva into the next decade. Okay, that's a legitimate prospect, and nobody's talking about him fighting for a lightweight title. Like, nobody talks about prospects for lightweight titles for world championships. No matter, even if they look good or bad, Jake Paul is still a prospect. Why does it have to be? We have to look at the world champions and see who Jake Paul can fight. What, bro? We gotta let the MMA crowd decide that. Like that's this conversation is too idiotic for us, bro. Like this, how do we sink this low? How do we sink this low? We can talk about Jake Paul. That's not the problem. The problem is we just take a prospect. It could be any prospect. In this case, Jake Paul, and we're mentioning world champions, major world champions in the weight class to see who he could fight. Bro, nobody does that. That's not a boxing conversation. Like I said, Lucas Body just had the knockout of the year the other night against Ashton Silva. Is anybody mentioning him or Shakur Stevenson or Javon Davis? No, he's still a prospect who now upped his resume a little bit. Jake Paul is still a prospect. Why are we mentioning Jake Paul in world championship fights? How did we sink this low?
Paulie, you just
commissioner of the WBA.
Paulie, you just gave me a thought. And I used to get asked all the time. You think Jake Paul is good for boxing? And I had my friends, they would argue with me. Like, my kids want to ask about boxing now, blah. I'm like, and I would always say, no, it's not. It's actually not good for boxing. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I'm like, because it's bringing down the IQ of the fan.
Yes.
Just like we are right now. Paul, you mentioned, like, how are we talking about this? Yeah, our IQ's lower because we watched that fight on Saturday.
Yeah, no, but that's the problem.
That is the problem. Exactly.
I feel like Billy Madison. I feel like the movie Billy Madison, when Billy Madison gave that speech.
I'm dumber.
We're all dumber having heard it. Yes.
Everyone in this room is now dumber from having listened to that speech. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. Everybody who listens to the show today is going to be dumber from this conversation. and we're gonna get no points for this. Hopefully, we get the views.
But listen. Here's a good aspect. Here's a good aspect because I did say this on a past show. I like what Jake Paul is doing because he's putting real fighters on the undercard. You mentioned the body knockout against Silv.
Yeah.
Did you see how clean and sharp that counterpunch was? That right hand was short. Boom, boom, boom. That was real boxing. See how short those punches were? When you watch Jake Paul, when you see Jake Paul doing this with both hands in front of a guy who's falling forward, gorilla punches stepping one foot in front of the other, you realize the difference. You see that there's a difference in the level. There's levels to this game. And I think it's a perfect display when you watch a Jake Paul card.
Let me finish my thought now. Because I know I got to gather myself together. I don't mind talking about Jake, and I do think Jake brings an element of goodness to boxing because look how many people have jobs because of Jake.
Yeah.
Fighters, real prospects, real fighters, real prospects. Amanda Serrano, Ashton Silva, who poor guy got knocked out. Lucas Body, we know who he is today because of that card.
That's a cover-up, bro.
We wouldn't know who Lucas Body is if he wasn't for that show. Lucas Body has been deserving of a bigger fight. You
don't think it's a cover-up, though? You don't think it's a cover-up?
Of course. In some ways, it's pros and cons to him. But look, just the fact that Lucas Body, the cat's out of the bag with Lucas Body, who had been a good fighter for a while, and I had known him for a while, now people know who he is. Or if it was not for that show, Lucas Body wouldn't have got an entrance into the mainstream boxing for people to know who he is. He would just be one of these guys that maybe people talk about, I heard of him. Now people know. We went viral with the knockout. So what I'm saying is there's still an element of goodness to boxing. Without that card, today Lucas Body is still an unknown entity.
Well, Shadeja Green gets a shot, too, on these cards. You get to see her. Yeah. She's a talented fighter.
Hold on. Let me finish, though. Because I got to get to my point now. There's no way we can let that idiot Chavez Jr. fight Jake Paul because Jake will beat him, okay? The gorilla punches will beat Chavez Jr. Chavez Jr. doesn't train. He's a stain on boxing. He gets tired. Uriah Hall. I almost called
Uriah Hall. Yep.
Uriah Faber would have probably beat Chavez Jr.
Uriah Faber, decent hands in his prime, yeah.
Okay, so you know what? Uriah Hall is limited boxing. Bless him, he tried. He tried. He was very basic, but he tried. Still just pushed Chavez Jr. to almost beat him. Bro, that fight was a draw. I don't know what the commentators were talking about where they made Hall won the fight. Hall lost the last round because Chavez Jr. was able to pot shot him. He let himself get pot shotted in the last round, and that made it a draw. Because Hall was on his way to winning, but his lack of experience, he walked in too many shots in the last round, in my opinion, and that made it a draw. And then he still got robbed because they gave it to Chavez Jr. Bro, there's no way you can keep letting this guy get these fights. I would fight Chavez Jr. today. You let me right off the couch today. I would get up Chavez Jr. and I would do better, and I would end up beating that guy and rid him of the opportunity for boxing to get this stain. This is, again, an ex-world champion. This is the problem. He's been an ex-world champion doing this. And because he's an ex-world champion doing this, it makes us look bad. It makes our whole sport look bad. And then what did he say after? I was out three years. That's why. Bro, you could have fought 3 months ago. What difference does it make? He looks the same every time. What do you mean?
You underestimate how easy it is to get rid of him.
Why? If you would have fought 3 months ago, he would have looked sharp? When does he look sharp? When does that guy look sharp?
Paul, you underestimate how easy it is to get rid of him. He lost to Anderson Silva a couple years ago. It was terrible. It was,
he looked bad.
It was horrible.
Jake beat Anderson Silva.
And then Jake beat Anderson Silva. So I can't even believe we're discussing this fight. Now this guy's 3 years removed from losing to one of Jake's foes that Jake beat. I mean, it's wild. But listen, but guess what? But Paulie, like I said, he's hard to get rid of. They're still going to use him. It's still going to happen.
Any of us right here, we just get up and glove up and get in the ring with Chavez Jr., we beat up Chavez Jr. with the weight. And with the weight. Right now. Literally. Wrap me up. Let me shadow box around because I'll tear a muscle because I'm old, and then get me in the ring. I'll beat Chavez Jr. right now. Right? It's mind-boggling that this guy's gonna step in. Couldn't even look good. They gave him a gimme against Uriah Hall. There was a gimme. He still couldn't look good, and now you're gonna get Jake Paul.
The problem that I have is this. I thought all the stuff you're saying about Jake is right. Oh yeah, Toronto. He raised the bar or the money in women's boxing, and he's doing things by with young prospects, and he's helping out this and there. And I'm like, he's doing some good things, but then at the same time, I'm thinking I'm looking how he's moving in his career, and that's what tells me about Jake and where he's at. He's scamming boxing. He's using boxing.
He's robbing the bank
to make money. That's it, robbing the bank, and that's it, man. I'm telling you, because if he wasn't, he will be fighting regular fighters. He'll be fighting real fighters. He'll be improving, like Chris said. And he's digressing now. He's not improving at all.
Is he robbing the bank? He's robbing the casual idiots. But then that money, think about it, is still being refiltered into legitimate prospects. He's robbing the casual idiots.
But through
boxing, still the mostly casual idiots. The people buying,
But through boxing. But then he's refiltering it. But then he's refiltering that money. He's refiltering that money into those fighters that he has on the card. I understand that.
And those guys are getting opportunities they wouldn't get. You know what I mean?
I get it. Yeah, I do get it. But I think he's buying his respect in the game. So when you have certain entities and guys like Terrence
sanctioning bodies, then they're gonna have no
sanctioning bodies and all of that. You're buying your position, bro.
I'll tell you what.
You're different prospects.
Boxing has.
I've said it before. Jake is like an alternate reality of professional boxing. There is professional boxing, and then there is the YouTuber lane. Two different lanes. It's like I said, I think I said it last week, Back to the Future, when there was the real 1985 and the alternate 1985. If you remember that movie, there was the alternate 1985 and the real 1985. Jake is like in an alternate. It's the same world, but it's like an alternate world. So it's pro boxing, but it's a different lane, and it doesn't shift into this lane.
Paulie's getting into quantum physics now. We're talking about the quantum theories.
It really is. It's like the alternate 1985. Tim, if you haven't seen Back to the Future, you got to see it, okay?
Gentlemen, let me put a point on this that we can discuss here, which is when people have asked me about Jake Paul and his effect on boxing, what he wants, a lot of times they say, I respect anyone who gets in the ring. I respect anyone who laces up gloves. I respect anyone who trains. And I said, not world-class championship respect. That's a different thing. Any martial art, if you say, I want to compete in a jiu-jitsu tournament, I respect you. I want to compete in a kickboxing match, I respect you. When you say, I want to be a kickboxing world champion, I go, you're going to have to put in years against the baddest guys on the planet to be there, and you're not there yet. So it's this idea of it's not about the money he brings in and all these things. He wants world-class respect. He's not fighting world-class guys. Chris, is that the heart of the issue, Chris?
That's why we're talking about a championship.
Right, exactly. That's why we're talking about a championship.
There's a lot of issues. Yeah. And, when he does his post-fight interview and he says, I'm the king of boxing, I'm the king of this, that's when you're going to start.
I'm the face of boxing.
No, he said he was the king. Yeah. He said he was the king. I mean, he's called himself the face. He's called himself face before. He called out Alex Pereira from UFC, again, calling out another non-boxer. But he goes, I'm the king of boxing. I'm the king at this. Come over to a ring and fight me. That's when you start getting people like us going, nah. You can, listen, do your thing. Last week, Tim, I called him like Butterbean. Like he was Butterbean, but he's at the top of the card. Because all the good fighters usually fight after Butterbean. But Butterbean actually fights at the end of the card now. Because Butterbean's got all the chips, and he's paying everybody anyway. But when you watch those fights, those cards, you got good fights, and then you got the Jake Paul fight at the end. And it's basically you're getting the Butterbean effect at the end of the show. So yeah, to your point, Jimmy, if you are not training at the brink of failure against the very tip top, the levels to this game, the championship level is so high. And everyone thinks they're good at stuff until they realize they're not. And you get up and you keep stepping up, but there's a lot of steps. And he's far from it.
Yeah. Is that the heart of the issue, Tim? When we talk about respect, why are we talking about world championships? Is he uses that terminology, having fought no one. That disparity in respect, is that the heart of the issue, Tim?
Yeah, but that's confusing the public. Real boxing fans, like they say hell no, but the public are saying no, hell yeah, he can do it. And everybody's watching him attempt to do it. And I'm telling you right now, man, when you have power and when you have money, you can move mountains in boxing, man. You can control boxing.
Boxing's the wild west.
Yeah. Seriously, you can. And so, like, this guy can position himself in the world championship fight. He can. All he has to do is continue to win. I just checked ProBox. You want to know where he's rated on not ProBox, excuse me, on BoxRec? You want to know what he's rated in USA right now?
Are you going to depress me?
He's 11 right now.
Oh, God.
He's 11. He's rated just one notch away from the top 10, bro.
Bro, look at the records of the guys he's fought. It's all pro debuts and non-fighters, non-boxers. He's got two boxers on there, 3 boxers.
But he's still number 11 in the US of A.
This is what's wrong with boxing. We allow ourselves to get black eyes all the time. We punch ourselves in the face all the time because the governing bodies, they don't care. They'll take that money. They never look at it. Everything is a smash and grab in boxing. I'm so sick.
Why is BoxRec ranking them that high? They're not getting paid.
Somebody's getting
It
greasy.
drives traffic, right?
They
The
have
fact
some
that we're
kind of, like,
talking about it
algorithm
drives
that
traffic to somebody. That's why it's happening. We're glad, Paulie, number one, I'm glad you're alive in this conversation. I hope you get some rest, take a little Advil. I think you're going to be okay. We'll be around for the next fight, Monday through Friday, here on Deep Waters, ProBox TV. We'll see you next time.
Wednesday Night Fights.
Dynamite action on Wednesday Night Fights every other Wednesday on your boxing channel.
Coming up on your next Wednesday Night Fights, July 31st, ProBox veterans Alberto Palmetta and Jesus Sriracha return to battle it out in the main event. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at ProBoxTV.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday Night Fights.